Oh, good evening, everybody. Long day at work. Long day at work. It's 9 o'clock. And, anyway, good day. Good day. I'm pumped up. I love those kind of days where you work 12 hours and at the end of it, you're just so pumped up because it was interesting or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I can't figure it out. Sometimes I work 4 hours and I'm exhausted. Sometimes I work 18 hours and I'm just like brand new. Like tonight, I think I might have worked about 12 hours today. And I just feel like I'm brand new, you know? I feel like I could go another 12 hours. Some days it's just draining and some days it's energizing. So whatever it is, I don't know. It's pretty cool. My dad used to have days like this. I remember as a young man, one time my dad said, "Hey, I've been working for 36 hours." He just was going. My dad was really energized by work. So that was cool. That was cool to have that role model in my life. Anyway, I want to talk tonight about subconscious communication. And something just went off in my mind. I just had this spark of an idea. So I'm like, wow, I gotta catch that spark. Because, in so many cases, once the spark is gone, it's gone. You can't get it back again, Either because you can't remember, or you're just not feeling it, or you get distracted with other things. You don't have time. So, anyway, I'm going to seize this moment. So, subconscious communication. Subconscious communication is so much more powerful. It's so much more powerful than conscious communication. Why? There's a lot of reasons why, I guess, but the main reason, I think, the most obvious reason, the most conscious reason, is because, or the reason that is closest to consciousness, because there's levels of consciousness, and you get to like a middle line where you're barely conscious, and when somebody brings it to your attention, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize it. You know it, but you didn't realize. And then there's subconscious, and it's like, if somebody pointed it out, you would be confused, but what are you talking about? And then it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper from there, right? So it's like a spectrum, the old spectrum. Everything's on a spectrum, there are no absolute points. There are only spectrums. You want to be in the spectrum of light. You don't want to be in the spectrum of darkness. You want to be in the spectrum of life. You don't want to be in the spectrum of death. Anyway, that's another little idea that I have, that everything exists at some place on a spectrum as opposed to an absolute point or an absolute pole. I think it's very helpful to look at things like that. Everything. I think it's very helpful and very powerful to start to look at everything that is proposed to you, everything that's put before you, as being something that exists somewhere on a spectrum, or multiple spectrums even, as opposed to something that's a pole, or an absolute point. So you can sort of eliminate, good and bad, and start to judge things on the basis of value. You can eliminate right and wrong and start to judge things on the basis of value. It's a very scary proposition, I realize that, but you don't have to be scared. I don't think it's scary. It's actually, to me, I think it's very empowering, So there's still good and bad. You don't have to worry about that. There's still light and dark. There's still right and wrong. It's just a spectrum as opposed to an absolute point, So anyway, getting back to my original point on subconscious communication, the reason that subconscious communication is more powerful than conscious communication is because conscious communication is something that you're aware of when it's happening, right? Subconscious communication, it's communication that's occurring and you don't even know that it's occurring. So you're being communicated with, ideas and propositions are being made to you, and you don't even know that they're being made. So just as the proposition can be subconscious and tacit, right? Or implied. Subconscious, tacit, implied. They're all kind of, they kind of exist in the same area of the spectrum of consciousness. Your acknowledgement, right? Or your agreement, or your acquiescence, or your rejection, or your denial is also tacit. So you could almost say that subconscious communication occurs in that area of human existence or human consciousness in or near the area of what people commonly refer to as the sixth sense, or gut feeling, or gut thought, or gut idea, So, sorry, I don't mean to be too wishy-washy and smeary. I don't think that I am. I think it might sound that way, though. I don't mean to make it too complex, but this is exactly everything I just said is as precise as what I mean as I can get. Example of subconscious communication. Okay, and this is one of the sparks. The idea of somebody telling you, "Don't think about purple Volkswagens," right? What is the conscious communication? It's very simple, exaggerated, simple idea, example, the very exaggerated, simple example of subconscious communication. Somebody says, "Don't think about purple Volkswagens." Well, what's the subconscious communication? The conscious communication is obvious, because the conscious communication is always obvious, because it's conscious. We don't really need to worry so much. The threat with communication is not in the conscious range of the spectrum. If you succumb to conscious communication, then that's the threat isn't in the communication. The threat is in your will, right? The threat is in your weakness of character. The threat is in, your personal vice. Okay, but if you're good, all right, and that's not an absolute assignment. Nobody is totally good. Everybody has areas of weakness, areas of strength. I mean, everybody does. I don't care who you are. You have areas of weakness, areas of strength. Doesn't matter how you look on the outside. Doesn't matter what they call you. They could call you a pillar of the community. You still have areas of weakness, So it's not an absolute assignment. It's just a figure of speech. When we say somebody's good, that's a figure of speech. Okay? So if you're good, or if you're, maybe a more accurate way to say that, if you're operating in an area of your character that you are strong, that you have good character in that area, and you are therefore good in that area, the threat of you failing as a result of your own will or your own vice, your own lack of character is very low, because you are good in this area, right? So where does the threat present itself? The threat has to present itself somewhere, because there's almost always, if not indeed absolutely always, it's either one of those two, almost always or absolutely always, there's always a threat. There almost always or always is a threat. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter how good things feel. It doesn't matter how wonderful. It doesn't matter how safe you feel. It doesn't matter. The feeling, that feeling of safety, that feeling of goodness, that might be the threat. Could be. That might make you complacent and therefore subject to, vulnerability, which is a precursor to failure, right? So there's always a threat, right? The threat comes to you in an area of strength, and one of the areas is subconscious communication. So if somebody says, "Don't think about purple Volkswagens," the conscious communication is, "Don't think about purple Volkswagens." Okay, got it. What's the reality of the situation? Everybody knows this. What's the reality? The reality is, subconsciously, they implanted, injected, embedded into your mind. Purple Volkswagens, right? The subconscious communication is purple Volkswagens, purple Volkswagens, purple Volkswagens, purple Volkswagens. You can't stop thinking about purple Volkswagens because the idea has been subconsciously implanted into your mind. Now that's an oversimplified, hypersimplified example that 90% of us are aware of, and we all laugh when we hear it because it's so obvious and we're aware of it. But the reality of the situation is that this exact same kind of thing is perpetrated against us constantly, all day long, every day. And I've been racking my brain. You might even go so far as to say wrestling with my own spirit, or wrestling with God's spirit, like, who was it? Jacob, I think, wrestled with the angel of the Lord all night long. And then in the morning, the angel of the Lord said, I can't defeat you, so I'll just cripple you. And he touched Jacob's hip. And then for that reason, Jacob walked with a limp for the rest of his life. And for 5,000 years, the Jewish people don't eat the hip or something bone of the whatever, So anyway, sorry, I'm a little shy on details on that particular point, but it is something along those lines. That's a vaguely accurate account of that thing. So of that event where Jacob wrestled with the angel of the Lord all night long. So anyway, I distracted myself. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. The old Jacob thing. Okay. So I've been wrestling. Yeah, I've been wrestling. I'm trying to figure out why is my preacher, Glenn Money, constantly talking about the Ku Klux Klan? Constantly saying, how do you say, what's the right word? Smearing, impugning people who happen to be born with white skin through no fault of their own. Just a little baby born with white skin. It's not the baby's fault. The baby has no control over it. But unfortunately for that baby, he lost the skin color lottery, and now he has white skin, and now he's got to go through the rest of his life with a stigma over his head. Right? I'm sorry, I can't help but laugh. It's just so absurd. I mean, it's absurd, but it's also dangerous, right? I mean, it's very dangerous. This racism, this blatant, when an authority figure stands up, and they do this all the time, when they stand up and say something that makes obvious, painful, excruciatingly explicit lack of sense, right? You can laugh at it, and you probably should. I mean, because it's worthy of being laughed at. But at some point in time, you have to take a step back and look at it soberly and say, wait a minute, it's funny, but at the same time, this is an authority figure. This is a kind of a threat, right? This is a subconsciously communicated threat, right? And this is not what I was going to say. I just came up with this right now. I mean, it's a threat, right? When, if let's take a 12-year-old child and a 3-year-old child. If a 12-year-old child tells a 3-year-old child, something that is blatantly false, and the 12-year-old child knows it, but the 3-year-old child doesn't, and it's not a joke, okay, because kids play jokes, but I'm not talking about a joke. What is that? That's something that's not good. I mean, that 12-year-old child is a threat to the 3-year-old child. And if it was just Glenn Money, that'd be fine, whatever, because Glenn Money's not a threat. But it's not. It's the entire structure of authority in the Western world. I mean, this is serious. I mean, to get up there and blatantly, openly promote racism, I mean, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, it's stupid, it's perverse, it's debased, it's degenerate. Yes, it is all of those things. But at the same time, it is the authority structure. Therefore, therefore, sober-mindedly, we have to look at it and say, wait a minute. It's all those things, but it's also a threat. This is not good. This is some kind of a strange, weird This is not good, right? I mean, and honestly, this is where the population, this is where the people, this is where the I, this is where the one man, okay, this is where we come in. Because we either sit there and nonchalantly shrug our shoulders and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Or, oh, well, I don't have time to worry about it. Oh, well, it's uncomfortable to deal with. Or, oh, well, and it is at that exact point that we condemn ourselves to whatever the authority structure wants to do to us. Because that's really what they're doing. They're really saying, we're going to say some really absurd, really stupid, really ridiculous things to you. And if you accept it, okay, so it's contingent, their abuse of us. Zedong's murder of 80 million of his own Chinese, a Chinese murdering Chinese guy, a Chinese guy murdering Chinese. Adolf Hitler, a German guy murdering German Jews and German Christians and German gypsies and German communists and German socialists and German Christians and German this and German. I mean, it was really just anybody who was against the Nazi party. I mean, come on, let's just get. I mean, that's who he killed. Anybody. Yes, he targeted the Jews, but that was the final solution. He was killing everybody before the big. Encore of killing the Jews. I mean, he was killing anybody and everybody that dared to stand against him, right? So, the German, Nero the Roman, killing Romans, Roman Christians, and Roman this and Roman that. I mean, and the Pol Pot, Cambodians, killing Cambodian guy, killing Cambodians, and Cambodians, Fidel Castro, Cuban guy, killing Cubans. I mean, that's the way it is. And that's the other part of the absurdity of this whole white people is evil and you got to run because the KKK's coming with their upside down ice cream hats on. I mean, that's the unbelievable. I mean, that's the perversity of it, is that these so-called educated people are standing up in front of us and promoting racism out of one side of their mouth while they're condemning racism out of the other side. You see what I mean? That's the purple Volkswagen effect. That's what you're saying, one thing consciously, but subconsciously you're accomplishing the exact opposite. It's dangerous. It is dangerous. I can't emphasize that fact enough. This is extraordinarily dangerous, what they're trying to do to us. And it's always the elite class and the people who align themselves with the elite class, because politics by nature is a team sport, right? I mean, in a football game, you pick a team. If you don't have a team, people are kind of like, you don't get how this works, do you? And some people don't pick a team. They just go for the popcorn and the ice cream and the beer and the hot dogs, okay? And some people are like that, but everybody's like, you don't really get this, do you? Politics is a team sport too. Everybody aligns with somebody. And you get some of the craziest choices. You get some people that align with, the nicest people in the world align themselves with the filthiest, most low down, most evil, most pathetic, most stupid, it's like, how can you? And you get some of the meanest, nastiest, ugliest, dirtiest people align themselves with the nicest. And it's like, how does this work? But that's the way team sports works, right? I mean, every football team has fans that span the spectrum. There's the spectrum again, right? That span the spectrum of social standing. All right? So that's it. It's the purple white. And so while they're inflicting us with the purple Volkswagen effect, they're saying racism and evil. I'll stand against it. What's his face? Tim Whipple. I stand against white supremacy. Glenn Money. We can't have white supremacists marching down the street. It's like, that's purple Volkswagen, man. And I don't think Tim Whipple knows what he's doing. I've already I've already described all that. I think that's just professional buffoonery. But I'm not so sure about Glenn Money. He might know exactly what he's doing. He really might. I think that's a possibility. But and it's kind of like this also. I didn't plan on saying any of that. That just came to me. What I plan on saying is that, black people and white people are getting along extraordinarily well. I mean, white girls love black men, and black men love white girls. And I see plenty of white men with plenty of black women, and I see biracial men like Colin Kaepernick and Barack Obama, half white, half black, but they choose to identify wholly and exclusively with their black side. I don't have any complaint with that. That's fine. I mean, I personally think you should shoot for a little bit more accuracy and say, hey, I'm mixed race, but I identify with my black side because I like that side better. But whatever. I mean, fine. Okay? Just do whatever you want. I don't care. Until you start beating me over the head with it, or you're trying to advance yourself on the basis of your race. It's like that just gets weird. It's like, no, advance yourself on the basis of the merit that you bring to whatever you do. Advance yourself on the basis of your own personal goodness and excellence and skill and all that. I mean, that's the way I think. I mean. But see, that's purple Volkswagen too. It's they just constantly put race. It's like they're taking race and rubbing our face with it. It's like, dude, we're over the race thing, all right? Can't you see? It's like, no, they got to go back. They got to take us back. We got to go back 50 years KKK, because it's like it's almost like they do want to take us back. It's almost like they want us to go back there, because I don't know why. Do they lack? Are they so completely devoid of personal goodness and a sense of identity and a sense of purpose that they have to try to time travel us all back to a time where they feel like they can have something that they can't get in the present? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's evil, man, and it's weird and it's creepy, and yeah, it's like evil, weird, and creepy, man. It's like, KKK, and then he brings in people to talk about the KKK. It's like, just him, Glenn Money talking about the KKK all by himself isn't enough. No, I got to bring people in. We're all going to talk about the KKK. And we're all going to get a whole bunch of white guys, and we're all going to talk about how evil white people are. It's like, dude, this is like Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes land. It's like, no, it's like nobody's evil because of the color of theirs. Nobody. And we're all good because of the goodness of our character and our spirit and our intention and our effort. As much as we might be clumsy and fail. I mean, it's just like, wow, man. It's like weird. And it goes all the way up, doesn't it? It goes all the way up to the top of the top of the top, of the authority structure. And all that stuff kind of see, it's like I said one time, power is a franchise, and the parties of power, we all pick which franchise we want to buy into, and when you buy into that franchise, it's just like, you get your little operating manual and a step-by-step, how you going to run that business. When you buy into these franchises of power, you get your little, figurative, subconscious operating manual, and you go step by step, and if you don't follow the directives of the franchise, well, the other franchise members and the corporate people from corporate, you're going to hear from some people sometime, and they're going to straighten you out and get you in line, because you got to keep the face of the franchise consistent. You got to keep it pure. You got to keep it moving forward in unity with the other franchise members, I mean, that's kind of the way it is, I guess. But so yeah, just I encourage everybody, just remember this purple Volkswagen thing, and remember that subconscious communication is real, and it's actually more powerful than conscious communication, because you don't know what's happening to you. You don't know that it is happening to you. And the other reason it's so powerful is because it's quite often the exact opposite of the conscious communication. So somebody can be standing up there saying, I believe in women's rights, and they're a rapist, right? Or I care about the children, and they are, running a sex trafficking ring out of the back of their house, you know. Or I stand for peace and they're funding war, you know. Or I'm killing the terrorist and they're funding the terrorist. Or, you know, I love Jesus and they worship Lucifer, you know. Or, I mean, you know, purple Volkswagen. I just encourage you all to remember as you go about your day and your week and month and year, just remember the purple Volkswagen. Think about it. Keep it in mind, you know, and watch what you're being fed, you know. And make sure that apple pie is really apple pie, because sometimes when somebody tells you they're giving you apple pie, they're giving you something that's the exact opposite, right? Whatever that may be. So, trying to think of a Bible verse to end with. The only one I can think of is that something about Jesus saying that the devil is the father of lies and confusion. He came to steal, kill, and destroy. Something to that effect. I think that's probably like an amalgamation of 3 or 4 Bible verses. But anyway, God bless you. Peace and blessings to you and your loved ones. Everybody take care. Bye.